Nothing on the show is to be construed as legal advice. The contents of this show are for informational purposes only.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Know Your Rights, the Consumer Lawcast with me, your host, Abbas Kazerounian. We've got an interesting episode for you today. I have got a very special guest because he's my nephew. He's also a really good lawyer from Pro Injury Attorneys, Masih Kazerouni.
Hey, Ab, thanks for having me on. I have no idea why you asked me to be on your podcast today, but I hesitantly said okay, and I'm here. And hopefully you know what we're going to talk about, because I sure don't.
No, I do. And then the reason why I think it's going to be special is not because it's you, that's my nephew that's on there, but I think it's really more the fact that you had an interesting path into law, like, you know, you kind of didn't know what you were doing. And I think one of the maybe the motivating factors is you were kind of on a quest and a journey kind of in your, I would say you're still youthful, but when you were younger, when you came out of college and, you know, you got yourself in a little bit of debt here or there, and you kind of discovered the laws a little bit and kind of, you know, recognize that you have rights and specifically consumer rights. And you use the law to protect yourself and, you know, became the successful lawyer that you are. And I kind of wanted to have that discussion about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I was a community college kid. I didn't get into any schools out of high school. So I went the community college route. I actually got rejected from every single school possible, Fullerton, Long Beach, every single place that I could have got rejected from, I did. So I had the community college route, and thank God for that. It actually gave me a second chance. So I went to community college, found myself at UC Santa Barbara. I finished my college extremely quickly. I was always didn't come from rich parents, so I was always considering the cost aspect of school. So, well, listen, I'll be honest. If I got into a good school out of high school, I would have found a way to go. But it was a good excuse to have. Oh, I'm doing it for the cost benefits, going to community college. But that was the only place that would take me. So that's where I went. Then I went to UC Santa Barbara, go Gauchos, very good school. And I was a law and society major. I found the major to get through school the quickest way possible. And then I found myself in a mortgage company with a really good friend of mine, because everyone was telling me, oh, you're going to make tons of money in the mortgage game. Don't bother with school. So I graduated college at 19, got into the mortgage business with my best friend. And right when we got in is when everyone closed up shop and basically said, yeah, there's no more mortgages to be had. So we took on some corporate debt at that moment in time. We had a few trips to Atlantic City. We were irresponsible. And some of that debt carried on to when I went to law school. And when I went to law school, I'm trying to stay above the curve, not get kicked out, and I just have creditors calling me all the time. And I get it. I owe the money, and I did make good on those promises down the line. But it sort of started driving me to figure out, hey, are they allowed to do this? Are they allowed to call me 20, 30 times a day, even when I told them to stop, or, hey, I'm busy? And that's how I started getting really passionate about consumer stuff. That's not what I do today. That's your specialty. But that's how I started learning about it a little bit more and seeing what my rights are. Ultimately, I owed money. Ultimately, they were right to come after me for money. But, I mean, there are rules in place that they need to abide by. And I started learning those rules and using it sort of as a sword to help me figure out how to make them, one, stop. Two, if they didn't stop, find a way to, you know, basically sort of punish them for what they were doing to me. And it sort of worked out. It actually worked out to my benefit. I don't want to sound like I'm happy about that they were violating my rules, but they did. They violated me.
They violated you. So,
hey, by the way, Abs, by the way, I got to say something.
Yeah.
Do you know what this week is?
This week, it's the first week of March.
Yeah, but there's significance of the first week of March.
Okay.
Only because of this presidency. So President Biden has called this week the week of consumer protection. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So I was trying to do some homework just to see, like, if we run out of things to talk about. So this week, March 1st through the 6th, President Biden has put it and declared it as a presidential order, the National Consumer Protection Week. And you should go read about this. It's actually really interesting. I read about it, and the most, basically what he's trying, the last paragraph is actually what we're kind of doing here. The last paragraph says, let me read it, because now I feel like I'm saying something important. The last paragraph says, basically, I can't find the last paragraph right now, but it basically says it wants the community. Okay, here. I call upon government officials, industry leaders, and advocates. That's you. You're an advocate for consumers across the nation to share information about consumer protection and provide our citizens with information about their rights as consumers. That's what I really got passionate about. What are my rights as a consumer? Yes, I fell behind on my credit card debt. Yes, I was a bad boy. I shouldn't have done certain things that I did and rack up debt. But what are my rights? I mean, like, this is America. It's law and order. It's you basically do something wrong. We have the court systems you could go through. The credit cards could have sued me. They could have sued me, brought me before a judge and a jury, and said he owes this much on his credit card bill. Pay us. Prove up your case, and I will pay you. That didn't mean they could harass me every day. That didn't mean they could call me after certain hours. Didn't mean they could call my brother or my father and tell him about my bad ways in life. Didn't mean any of those things. But that's what made me passionate about it. And that's what I think is important for your listeners to know their rights. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. Thank you. So, I mean, this is really the main reason why I invited you on, because I want our viewers and I want our listeners to kind of like have a proof of concept, because, you know, we have different episodes and we've done, you know, different, things about different areas of rights, whether it's debt collection, whether it's mortgage rights, whether it's bankruptcy. But I wanted a proof of concept. And like, you are the proof of concept, because you're a real life person that has been a client, as a family member, and doesn't mind putting themselves out there. And I can't just get my clients because, you know, they value their privacy, and rightly so. And they don't want to kind of put themselves on a platform like this. And I think you're a really good example of somebody that got themselves in a pickle, and you didn't just immediately panic. You listened to advice because you knew it existed. There's free advice from professionals that do this area of law that shouldn't charge you any money, that will tell you that the world has not ended, that will tell you that you have different areas, different rights in different areas of law. And yes, you may be in debt. There may be creditors calling you, but and unfortunately, but it's also fortunate that, you know, from my experience, and this is not a statistic, this is just, I'm just plucking this through experience or whatever, but there's probably, at least in the state of California, because we have the Rosenthal Act as well, a good 85% shot that if a creditor or a debt collector is contacting you on a continuous level, that they're probably violating some kind of law. And you, as a consumer, have certain rights to be vindicated. If you know those rights, and if you take the time to take that free advice, to realize that necessarily that you don't necessarily need to file a bankruptcy, or you don't have to necessarily just stop picking up your telephone and going into hiding and getting depressed and all of these things. And I think you're living proof that you dug yourself out of this hole using consumer rights, eradicated your debt, became a lawyer, and now you are using that experience, that knowledge, to help other consumers. Though, you know, you do a slightly different area of law, but that passion has empowered you, that you as a lawyer can help other consumers vindicate their rights, irrespective of which area of law it may be.
Right. No, I totally agree with that, and I'm willing to share, because I think it's important that, you know, people who find themselves in that situation, like I've heard people tell me they want to file bankruptcy on a $15,000 debt, and I sort of chuckle, because, you know, bankruptcy has, and I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer, and I'm not going to pretend I am, but it has some long-term ramifications on your life. Like, that's one of the boxes to check. Nevertheless, you might have some 30-day late, 60-day late, and the credit cards are harassing you, you actually might be able to sue them for the violations of law that they've committed. And in some cases, you'll get an offset on your debt, because I didn't have any huge credit cards. Like when I was in debt, it was like a $2,000 card here, a $1,000 card here, $1,500 card here. They would all add up. But if you think about some of the violations they were partaking in, sometimes they ended up owing me money after, I brought it to light of what they did. It's just, if you don't know what the rules are, you're going to be really, really crappy at the game. And I'm not saying that this is like some kind of game that you should like rack up debt just to go get them. But if you find yourself having debt, know the rules of engagement when it comes to them collecting, meaning the debt collectors, and maybe you'll find yourself in a better place than you were before you knew the rules. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's a really good, message as well. Know the rules of engagement is what Masih just said. And you can bet that the debt collector and the creditor knows all their rights, and they know what they can do as far as how to collect their money. And I think it's only right as the consumers, when they're being engaged by somebody in that particular game, and it is a game, that you know your rights, because it's already kind of like an imbalance of power there. Because if, let's say a credit card company like American Express wants to come you, they've got all the money in the world, they've got all the lawyers in the world. It's already like, you don't have a good hand in that as it is. But in order to utilize the hand that you've been given to the best of your ability, you need to know the rules. So taking that card analogy, it's like being in a poker game and not knowing how to play poker, right?
Right.
Like the guys know how to play poker and you don't know how to play poker. It's probably not going to be a good day for you. And I think, and I think it's really, really important to empower yourself. And it doesn't cost you anything to empower yourself. And I think that's one thing that Masih did very, very effectively in order to do that. And then another point that I want to pick up on that Masih talked about is, be careful when you're trying to file bankruptcy. And, and $15,000 is relative, right? $15,000 may be really a huge amount of money to somebody, and it may not be a lot of money to somebody else. But one thing that is universal is that bankruptcy is an extreme relief with serious consequences. And I don't just mean in the normal context that we may think about, because yes, it's going to be on your credit report for 7 years before it drops off. Your creditors and debt collectors, everybody's going to see that. If you want to borrow money, it's going to change your interest rates that you're going to be given on whether you want to finance your car, your furniture, your house, whatever it may be. But it has other consequences that we don't necessarily think about. For example, Masih made his mistakes in his early 20s. And, we all make mistakes in our early 20s. But now he's a successful lawyer. And you know what? He may want a career change. He may say, I want to go be in the FBI. Well, guess what? One of those questions that you're going to get asked if you're going to want to join the CIA or the FBI, or if anything that has any national security attachment to it, is, have you ever filed bankruptcy? And that may affect your future job prospects by you having made a mistake in your youth or at any time in your life, and you made a kind of a rash decision to go file bankruptcy without exploring all rights. And sometimes, I'm going to tell you, bankruptcy is the only option. But don't just jump to that kind of conclusion and just give up without empowering yourself with the knowledge and the information so that you can make an informed decision before you make that leap into the bankruptcy realm or whatever realm it is that you've decided to go down. There are always options. And unless you have explored every single one, I don't believe you're going to make an informed decision. And I think Masih is a perfect example of that in what you've kind of gone through. And I think you kind of exemplify what we try to do with our clients is empower them so that they can go live their lives and have a bright future.
Yeah, and I think the dynamics have changed a lot too from the time that I was trying to get the knowledge to basically go up against people who were on the daily harassing me. Now, I mean, thanks to a lot of the stuff consumer lawyers like you and some of your colleagues have done, there's all these offshoot areas where they could be violating when they're trying to debt collect too. Like, for instance, they could be recording your call without telling you they were recording your call. Well, guess what? That is a violation in California, and you're entitled to $5,000 every time it happens, up to $5,000 every time it happens under 632. Or they could be sending you an automated text about your debt, or they could be auto dialing you. Obviously, there's other aspects you would have to tell them to stop and a cease and desist letter. But it would be really, really good that if someone's finding themselves in this dark place where they think their world's crushing in on them and they have all this debt, what do you have to lose to kind of know your rights? Just know your rights and take a little piece of paper, say, this is my TCPA rights, this is my recording rights, this is my don't call me after certain time rights, and don't call me before, and don't tell my uncle about my debt rights. And when they call, you're going to pick up anyways. See if they violated any of your rights. This is not about you trying to set them up. This is just about you basically learning if they violated your rights or not, because they probably have. And if they haven't, at least you know that they're playing by the rules.
Right. Exactly right.
I'll tell you this example, and I don't care. One time, a lawyer told my lawyer, a lawyer for the defense told my lawyer, "Oh, Masih's a vexatious litigant, and he's brought these claims against us, and blah, blah, blah." And we went before the judge, and it was proven that I wasn't a vexatious litigant, because every time I was represented by a lawyer, and every time I won. So if I was wrong 27 times, then I'm entitled to 27 judgments against those creditors for violating my rights. If you don't like it, stop violating people's rights. If you don't like people suing you, stop violating people's rights. It's as simple as that.
I think there's a lot of people that will look at this and hear this and say, you know what, you're just trying to scam the system, and there is a conservative viewpoint about, if you owe the money, pay the money, stop messing around and trying to abuse the system. Well, as Masih just laid out, this is not something, he's not gaming the system. If you have a problem with the law, take it up with your your representatives in Washington. These are federal laws that we're talking about, right? But beyond that, because there is such strict regulation on the way people collect money, the way you can record people, invade people's privacy or lack thereof, all these regulations are set in there by the legislature, that were signed into law. So it's something that we deemed as a society important to have. But for the conservatives out there, there is also another reason. Because you have this regulation, it's important to police the bad actors. Because you know what? Let's forget about the debtors and the consumers for a second. Because most conservatives are capitalists and they believe in a free market, right? And so there's going to be good actors that, irrespective of whether they like the law or not, they're going to obey the law and conduct their business practices in the right way, in compliance with both federal and state law. If there were no consumer lawyers policing these companies, it would create like an unfair competition in the business field. The businesses that are doing it the wrong way are going to be put at a competitive disadvantage. So by us doing this is not just helping consumers, it's also creating an even playing field in the business world, so that the good actor in the debt collection world does not get penalized by the bad actor getting away with and being able to do business in an unfair way. Because obviously it's easier to collect debt being abusive and threatening and bullying people and breaking the law than it is to comply with the law. And so it is the businesses that are also being protected by this. So when Masih, for example, decides to vindicate his rights and bring a consumer lawsuit, he's actually serving two purposes. Well, three purposes. Number one, he's representing himself and vindicating his rights as he should, as is his right. Good for him. Number two, it's creating a prophylactic effect to stop other businesses doing it the wrong way, because they say, hey, if we do this, there are going to be people like Masih and Abbas and his colleagues that are going to bring these lawsuits until we stop. And number three, it protects the businesses that are doing it the right way. It is not just about gaming the system. It is not. If anyone is gaming the system, it is corporate America trying to game you. And unless you're willing to empower yourself with the knowledge and at least try and create an even playing field by knowing the rules, you are the one that's being gamed.
Abs, would you say in the last 10 years you've seen, at least with the credit, at least with the major credit cards, let's not talk about the third-party debt collectors who buy the debt. Would you say that their behavior has gotten better because of some of this?
Way better.
Okay, so here's a point I want to make. So I remember looking at consumer complaints like 5-6 years ago, and there used to be a lot of credit collection. Credit collection was usually number 1 or number 2, right? And I wanted to kind of verify this. So before I came on this call, I'm like, what is it now? What is it now?
You're talking about credit card and like debt collection lawsuits?
No, I'm just talking about debt collection practices. Like consumers would complain that was like the number 1 complaint in consumer. They would run these polls, right? Yeah. Now, I know what it is for me. I get the call 20 times a day. And if there were people to go after and there was laws to go after these people, maybe that could change. But we both know these people are in some basement and we can't go after them. I get the daily call that someone told us that you wanted a Marriott room, and I get a daily call that someone's trying to sell me a car warranty. I'm talking about 20 calls a day. And I know you getting the calls because just 2 weeks ago we talked about someone harassing you. And you finally got so upset you called them back and you kind of give them a runaround a little bit, but we won't get to details with that. But what I'm trying to say is if the same type of protections were there and we knew who we could go after, those practices would naturally stop. I can't stop this damn Marriott call every day. It's to the point where Marriott has put out a statement, okay, basically saying Marriott International statement on fraudulent phone calls. It's not us. It's a pre-recorded call, often known as robocalls, that fraudulently reference Marriott's name to entice the call recipient to listen to a sales pitch. So if the stuff with the credit card companies went, unanswered like this, it would just be as bad, but then it would have a far worse consequence on consumers. At least this is just bothering my day for a second or two. I can hang up. I can try to block the number. Or they'll keep using other numbers. But there's something to be said about these rules that the legislators have put out there, and going after these companies actually changes their behavior for the better. It
does. It really, really does. And so, it's like a kind of a Tom and Jerry cartoon, like our business. It's like, the Fortune 500 companies, the credit card companies, the debt collection companies, they get into a pattern of doing a certain thing a certain way because it's profitable until they get checked, until they get policed. Once the lawsuits start coming in, once the Attorney General's office starts getting involved, they immediately or slowly kind of back off that position and get into another position. And so Masih is 100% right. If you look at the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Rosenthal Act, those lawsuits have dramatically reduced over the last decade because these actors, some of them are just out of business because they couldn't deal with the lawsuits, and the bigger ones have survived, but they've changed their conduct. But they have kind of, like a lot of businesses, evolved with the times. They may not be violating the FDCPA as much, but they're getting more aggressive in their collections by credit reporting, for example. So they're trying to get leverage over consumers through the way they report credit. And that has become, and that the lawsuits on FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, have increased dramatically over the last 5 years. And there is a direct correlation in the policing of the FDCPA cases and reducing the bad behavior under the realm of the FDCPA, but the enhancement in bad conduct under FCRA. And so the lawsuits over there have increased. And so it's like Tom and Jerry. It's like, you do thing, he gets away with it, and then he's back again, and he's doing something else, taunting the cat, and we're back at it again, playing in a slightly different arena. But it's important to have the knowledge about the entire periphery and all of these statutes, and continue to educate yourself on all of these statutes so that you understand your rights. Because if they go that way, they may be violating the law here and not here anymore, and then vice versa. It's kind of this balancing thing.
Well, yeah, if I had those problems now, I would know nothing about FICRA. I would probably have to call Uncle Abs and say, hey, they're reporting it on my credit. What do I do? Why can't I get a car when this thing shouldn't be on there? But I mean, it's good in one sense that they're not maybe doing it as much on the phone calls and the abusive practices there. But it's unfortunate that they've moved it along to, another realm of bad actions. I mean, listen, with COVID, there's so much horror stories I hear. And this guy doesn't care, and I'm not going to share his name or anything like that. But like car companies, I do lemon law. So car companies, I got one particular guy. He basically got a deal from a manufacturer that was go unnamed that basically said, come and get a car, and you don't have to make a payment. You don't have to make a payment for 3-4 months because of COVID. So he gets the car, and sure enough, he's getting late payments on his credit. So then they finally have him come over, and they write him a new contract to fix the problem. So now his new payment is like, let's say we're in March. Let's say it's March 28th. So he leaves on March 2nd, and he goes home. And on March 6th, because something got messed up, the repo guy comes, takes his car, goes to his neighbor to find out where the car was first, tells him he's a deadbeat, takes the car. So I got a dude who his payment's not due until March 28th, but they take the car on like the 7th of March. Like that gets my blood boiling, because it's not just the fact that this guy, went and took an offer from them and didn't pay his payment late. They invited him back to fix the problem, and then yet something slips through the crack, and then the way they took the car.
Yeah.
That is probably going to end up on your desk, but because I don't do those. But bottom line is, it's stuff like that it's what gets me angry. And I'll tell you what's getting consumers angry. Like 2 polls that I looked at right now, it's telecommunications, auto sales. It's these robocalls and these daily harassments. They use numbers that are close to your area code, so you pick up because you think grandma needs something at home. And boom, it's just someone gave us your information from the Marriott.
Yeah. Well, with the FTC and the FCC, the number one complaint they receive every year, and I think consistently for at least the last 5 years, has been unwanted robocalls. Like,
so, is there something the phone companies can do? I know now we're asking them to do some enforcement, but is there something the phone companies can do? Should there be an onus on Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile to help identify these companies by their practices and through complaints, and just shut them down?
I mean, that's an interesting concept, and it's been one that's been thrown around. But the problem is, a lot of these bad actors are offshore, like with a dialer in a given country that we have no jurisdiction in. And they're just making these fraudulent calls and trying to scam people, and they're just getting numbers. I mean, that has nothing to do with Sprint. It's just that their users are getting them. Now there are entities that have basically tried to tabulate these scam numbers that have been bought and used, and I think you can use call blockers that are. There's some that are free, and there's more premium packages you can buy. There are apps for smartphones that identify some of these calls. And they can basically, I can't tell you they're going to eradicate all robocalls and spam calls, but they can get rid of a good percentage of them, maybe 70-80% sometimes, which is actually a considerable amount considering how many spam telephone calls we receive. So
yeah, well, they got to think of something, because I mean, it disrupts business, it disrupts your daily life. It basically, I'm spending probably 10-15 minutes a day just basically clearing these out or hanging it up and blocking another number. It becomes disruptive to life, and it's just, I don't like it. It's not cool.
Think about that, right? If you're doing 15 minutes a day, that's an hour and 15 minutes during a work week, right?
Right.
During a work, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. That's like 4 hours, 4.5 hours. What am I talking about? No, sorry, almost 5 hours a month. Is that right? Yeah.
Right.
That adds up real quick.
Yeah, my math is bad, but I think that's 60 a year. That's like 60 a year. So, why have my robocalls not stopped? I mean, you're the guy who's doing consumer or rights stuff, and
I think you will find that from legitimate companies, illegal robocalls have reduced. Right? There's
yeah,
plenty of
I don't think it's ever a legitimate company anymore. I feel like it's always some basement somewhere offshores.
I think you just answered your own question because
Yeah, I did, but I'm still mad about it. I'm still mad about it because it's kind of like I just think about what gets me mad, what gets you mad, and I mean, I wish we got like serious about it. I know it's not even anywhere close to the same thing, but it's like start sanctioning countries that are not doing enough to freaking go and get these guys out of their rooms. It's not just that. It's also they prey on the elderly. They prey on the elderly, and I've seen so many scams of really good people losing out of money by Venmo. I hear this from my mom and my dad all the time, where my mom actually believes these IRS messages that she has on her voicemail saying, you need to call us because you owe us money. So it's kind of like there's no pocket to go after. You will never find these people. But it's very related to, wanting to help the consumer, but there's not, I mean, it has to be from a law enforcement aspect. It has to be as the USA getting behind it and saying, like, we're done with our patrons, our citizens getting scammed. I just wish there was more lawyers can do for those people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, very few of those people that are calling are from within the borders of the United States and a legitimate company. And if they were legitimate, they wouldn't be trying to scam, the elderly or anybody for that matter. Most of them, unfortunately, are offshore with fraudulent companies and they're scammers. That's what's going on. I mean, listen, Masih, we've already kind of gone over it's been amazing chatting with you, and I want you back to have a part 2 on this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I listen. I do have a lot of confidentiality paragraphs in the many cases that I've settled, so I can't really get into too many details of like who I went up against and what. But I can put together generally what violations have happened to me and sort of what the results were without having to reveal too much. And get myself into some kind of trouble, which I don't want to get myself into. Which I think is messed up by the way that they make you not be able to talk about it, because I think it would help people understand,
Well, there's a reason why they don't want other people to find.
I know. But I'm just, you know what I mean.
For sure. No, listen, thank you so much for being here. And I'm telling you,
no problem, man.
We're going to have a part 2 on this.
Yeah, if you guys ever want to talk about lemon law or freaking, I've been doing some lately. I've been doing some name and likeness cases. I knew nothing about it, but I started some of those. They're kind of fun. I'm a solo practitioner. I don't have any employees. I have no partners. I like to travel. I like to be free. So I get to do things that I actually really, really like to do, which is help people with problems that I feel like are just, and I'll chat with you about any of those things anytime you want, buddy.
Absolutely. I think we should definitely talk about your general practice next time, because you dabble in a lot of different things. I
do.
It demonstrates how many different types of laws there are out there and different rights. And I think we can get into that a little bit. So thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thank you. And don't forget, this is the National Consumer Protection Week.
National Protection Week. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Take it easy.
Thank you, President Biden. And thank you guys for tuning into one of our podcasts again. Until next time, keep it legal.